Superintendent Henry Adair says if the cuts are approved by Congress, the county can expect up to $1.5 million less in educational programs and $1,158,000 less in the food service program. He says the big cuts would be $1 million in the Title I remedial reading program, $160,000 in vocational education, and $151,000 in Title VI-B, the flow-through backup money for special ed. Adair says the cutbacks make it necessary to lay off the 75 teachers.
Some of those positions will be taken care of by attrition, by retirements, through resignations. Now, all of these positions that people whose contracts would be non-renewed would be people that are non-tenured teachers.
Adair says the county system may find out later that all the cuts won't be necessary, but says the board has to go ahead now and terminate the teachers' contracts before the end of May. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
The ideal time for a patient to see an obstetrician is after the first missed menstrual period. This way, a lot of the problems, can be avoided, or at least can be defined and steps taken to remedy them, before they get out of hand. $5,000, $1,600, $800, $1,300 by federal insurance company.
For the first time in 3 days, the doors to the Senate chamber are open, and cots and blankets are sitting in the halls behind the chamber ready to go back into storage. The round-the-clock debate ended at about dawn when senators agreed to weaken the House-passed bill. Backed by farm and labor interests, the bill contains a complicated formula that would allow forest and farm landowners to pay lower taxes. The amendment limits the tax breaks to a 2,500-acre maximum in each county. That compromise intended to keep large out-of-state corporations from getting huge tax breaks that could result in decreased revenues for local school districts. The bill now goes back to the House, which can concur with the amendment or refuse to concur and kill the bill, or set up a joint conference committee to try and work out the differences between the two houses. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
It wasn't near as big when we started. We didn't have as many tents to put up, and I don't think we had any bleachers at all the first one, and no roping off, much to do.
But now this year it seems there's so much to do.
Yes, there's a lot more. It's getting bigger and bigger every year.
What are some of your people now doing, the Arrowhead staff?
Well, we started about really a week or 10 days ago, preparing for it. We had to aerate all the greens and top dress them and fertilize the fairways and rough, and then mow everything, get everything manicured, edge all the sand traps, stuff like that.
And then do your people have a hand in getting the bleachers and all out here?
The city brought the bleachers out, and we placed them where we want them.
And roping off, I see some of your men involved in that.
We have to do all that ourselves. I bring in extra labor for about a week, to do all this, because my regular crew I can't do it, you know.
You enjoy doing it, Carl?
It's a lot of work, but I enjoy it, yeah.
There were more than 30 attempts to change Representative Walter Owen's $1,299,000,000 education trust fund budget. The most controversial set of amendments would either have added to or shifted available money to create a fully funded $20 million hospital medical insurance program for school teachers. With Alabama Education Association Executive Secretary Paul Hubbard closely watching the vote from the balcony, the House narrowly defeated the measure 4 times.
Mr. Holly's amendment adds benefits for teachers in a year that you're in 10% proration. And I don't think you and I can support such an amendment because of that.
A $2 million war on a literacy appropriation came under attack several times, but surfaced untouched when the budget finally passed. Owen's budget is based on what some consider a conservative 4% growth in tax revenues. That means schools won't get as much as they were promised this year, but it is more than they actually would receive after the 10% proration. Owens argued throughout the day that he would oppose any amendment that would increase the total of his budget and put it in what he called a position to create a 4th year of proration. By late afternoon, Owens succeeded in protecting his budget from major changes. The education budget now goes to the Senate, where it will join the general fund budget passed by the House earlier in the session. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News in the House of Representatives.
You know what I like about this? You got 600 kids coming in here for the weekend. They're going to have the parade, which you all are going to be in Saturday, and they go into the zoo, and then they're going to be out at the golf course on Sunday.
That's what it's all about, ain't it?
It sure
You
is.
know, it's really not a show or a golf tournament. What it really is after we leave, what we leave for them is what it's all about.
Do you realize that the Lindsay Weekend has funded 3 international Summer Olympic Games, 2 Winter Olympic Games, and countless regional and local Special Olympic Games? Do you realize that?
Let's do a bunch more.
All right. Glad to have you guys.
Y'all come and see us.
And I feel now that he has established his credibility with the American farmer, and the American farmer will make good use of this lifting of the grain embargo, and I hope in the future that we don't have to resort to agricultural embargoes against nations in the protection of our security.
Dr. Teague warns the PTA members that Alabama schools are in serious trouble. He says the public schools are losing the support of the wealthier parents who now send their children to private schools. And he says this trend could make public schools similar to overburdened, underfinanced hospitals.
Both budgets now before the legislature cut the other current expenses of school systems greatly. And that is where the inflation really is. You don't misunderstand me. More local effort is important. And your local efforts are vitally important.
Dr. Teague suggests that the PTA have more input in education by developing a strong lobbying force.
You've got to effectively represent the parents of Alabama school children. And you've got to let legislators know what the feelings of those parents are. The third thing you've got to do is let those voting parents know how those legislators respond.
Teague told the parents that collectively they could outvote any other special interest group that's now at the Capitol. Jane Matheson, WSFA, TV News.
There were 3 basic demonstrations of which all staff members of the convalescence home participated in. Everyone from the staff administrator on down to the maintenance man took part. A fire protection consulting firm presented the demonstration, which consisted of a patient rescue for those patients bed-stricken, as well as patients confined to wheelchairs. The third demonstration involved a smoke-filled room, which, according to fire safety expert Russell Phillips, results in smoke inhalation deaths that occur when occupants of a burning building panic. He says staying low to the floor below the smoke level can mean the difference in life and death when trying to escape a fire. Jim Chartier is the administrative director of VeriCare.
Our company is convinced and firmly believes that the way to patient safety is through prevention. And the purpose of this seminar, both this morning and afternoon, was to orient our administrators in the state and their professional staff as to what to do, what not to do in terms of preventing a fire, and then if it should happen, how to react to minimize loss or prevent loss of life or limb.
Chartier says his facility, the newest in Montgomery, is only one of 8 such convalescence homes in Alabama, all of which have special fire safety training. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
We stress the skills appropriate to the job. And of course, there are certain skills that anyone needs, such as good communication and presentational skills, knowing how to market yourself. And that goes far beyond dressing. That has to do with competence as well.
GNP, you're going to need less government spending. Spending is going up. The budget is going to rely less on the growth of the budget for, well, it's one reason that I wanted to visit. It's a bipartisan budget. There are Democratic co-sponsors as well as the White House. And very frankly, if that budget of the president's is allowed to dissipate, is allowed to be torn apart, is turned down by the Congress, it will be a loss not for Ronald Reagan, it will be a loss for the American people.
you or are you not?
You guys, I just got off the plane. That's a tough question.
Well, I know you came.
I hadn't really thought much about it, believe it or not. I'm just trying to make it through this pilot and find out what the heck's going on.
It's on tonight, isn't it?
Yeah, it's on tonight.
You came all the way to Montgomery, Alabama to watch your show, right?
It's the only place in the world that it's on. I'm not even going to watch it.
You're not?
I've seen it so many times. I'm just going to wait and find out. I guess we'll know something about a week or 10. I'll be glad when it's over. I'm so tired. I wish I could give everybody an answer. I've made up so many stories and tried to make things exciting everywhere I go that I've got everybody confused, including myself. I'm just be glad when we find out whether we got to go or stop, and then I can go from there.
Reed got no response when he asked the teachers to raise their hands if they thought all teachers should be required to take the National Teachers Exam, and only a few raised their hands in favor of national tests for students. Reed says it's cruel to make students take tests like the California Achievement Test when the state doesn't spend California dollars on education, and it's unfair to expect the students to answer questions in subjects they haven't taken.
I think as educators, just as you would be opposed to being required to take a test on something you had not been exposed to, I believe we ought to say it's unfair to children.
Reed says another problem is that teachers are misunderstood by parents. He says parents are looking for scapegoats for their own failures. He urged the teachers to form a new partnership with the parents. Reed says right now, parent groups like the PTA don't do anything for education except when it comes to denying teacher benefits. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
Mutual system, and this is to go for the use of and the purchase of a gas detector, which will be used in arson liquid.
And it's the other part, higher proof alcohols to set fires. Some of you drinking liquor, so to speak, to set fires. We find that, and this gives us that
Quite a while on never doing anything toward arson investigation.
to show that from about 11 at night till 6 in the morning, better than half the fires are arson set fires. Some of you drinking liquor, so to speak, to set fires. We find that, and this gives us that additional capability of picking up alcohol and even detect natural gas.
Stand idly by and don't say anything about it. You know, I think it's criminal. Early teaching, okay, no, like California Achievement Test and other type tests. How many you think we ought to?
Expenses. Most of those expenses have very limited investment power. Not only are there, unless they put it into writing and meet some feet met, that are designed to protect, unless if we have minor children, we have to know we're going to live until they all reach.
Probably not so much to improve the jail, but maybe to build more.
On May the 11th, we should review the fuel adjustment procedures and the rules pertaining thereto from bottom to top and bring them back into a context where the Public Service Commission, which is representative of the consumers of this state, can have the prerogative to look this over and say, is it right and is it just?
The president's decision to lift the grain embargo coincided with the news conference at the governor's mansion. U.S. Congressman Jack Kemp from New York, who is in town visiting Governor James, says the president's decision is a good move.
I personally think the president was right during the campaign in coming out in opposition to the grain embargo. All it was is shooting the American farmer and the American consumer in the foot, because we have a tremendous trade deficit, and this country needs markets for its goods. But the president has had to go slow in lifting the grain embargo. I say that as basically a free trader, because there were 21 motorized Soviet rifle divisions on the border of Poland, and if he had lifted it at the wrong time, it would have given a wrong impression to the Soviet Union.
And Alabama's U.S. Congressman Bill Dickinson says lifting the grain embargo will benefit Alabama's economy.
It had no terrible consequences when they imposed it, such as they did for the corn and wheat farmers, but it did have a ripple effect on us, and it will be beneficial to lift it now.
Lifting the grain embargo was one of President Reagan's campaign promises. The embargo was initiated by former President Carter as a result of the Soviet Union's invasion of Afghanistan. The Soviet news agency, TASS, says the embargo wasn't successful. They say it hurt the United States more than the Soviets. Jane Matheson, WSFA, TV News.
Siegelman says some of those improvements include extending voting hours, revising voting laws to preserve secrecy of absentee ballots, and removing the double standard for the handicapped and elderly. In the past, these people have been required to get a doctor's certificate before casting an absentee ballot.
One of the things that people want to see happen is that we open Alabama's laws up to competition among the newer types of voting equipment companies, that we take some steps to ensure that those people who are on our voting list are really alive and well and are not dead people, duplicates, or felons. We've also had a series of complaints about the fact that candidates who run for office in Alabama don't have to tell voters where they get their money until after the election.
Siegelman says the only way the state can clean up its voting list is to approve a statewide voter registration file maintenance system. This would force the state to assume responsibility for purging voting lists. He says such a bill has been filed in both the House and Senate. As for the other suggestions, Siegelman says his office will take them under consideration before making administrative changes this summer and pushing for other changes in the next legislative session. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
We're dumping them for $2. With a 45.
It's pulling the arms out over the line, over the target line, and they're coming from the outside back in. What gets there first?
The 2 days of parades, parties, shows, and of course the golf tournament attracts up to 30,000 people, according to Chamber of Commerce spokesman Randy Rushton. Rushton says many of the visitors are from out of town and out of state, and that's what brings in the money.
Each one of these visitors hopefully will, not all of them of course will be visitors, but a lot of them will be, which will be spending 2 nights here, and each day they're in town, each one of them averages spending $66. So
most of the activity appears to be concentrated downtown, with hotels reporting they're filled to capacity. Hotels in other areas of the city say business is running about the same, although one clerk at a hotel on the bypass says they've received some of a downtown hotel's overbooked customers. And besides helping the Montgomery hotel economy, the Lindsay weekend brings outside business to other attractions.
there'll be a lack time where the folks can enjoy some of the many attractions we have around town, the Jasmine Hill, the old North Hull Street District, the Archives and History Building, to name just a few. And also the restaurants, of course, people have to eat, and the shops in the various shopping centers and shopping strips around town will enjoy some of this money coming in from the outside also.
Rushton adds that the city wants to continue to get as many shows as possible, as well as actively recruit convention groups and tourists. Jane Matheson, WSFA TV News.
Believe it or not, we sang one country song on the show about 3 years ago, and if I remember the words, oh my God, it goes like this. It's a darn good life, and it's kind of funny how the bee was made, and the bee made honey, and the honey bee looking for a home, made a honeycomb.
He remember because he, heard it on the news.
I just forgot about it, my mama had to call and asked me if I was supposed to take him to church this morning, and she called and said, well, you gonna come and get me? And I looked at the clock, it was 8:30, and it's 9:30 really, so I had forgotten. I didn't even know anything about it.
I had my sense of timing off, but I wasn't late because I wasn't going nowhere.
You sit on TV and I went to bed early last night.
Well, did it make you late for any appointments?
It did.
It's called a seed cell. It looks something like a satellite dish, but it works like nothing else on the market today. The primary dish is made of 12 25-foot petals. Each one is filled with mirror tiles that collect the sun's rays. Once the light hits inside the cell, it's at a temperature of 3,400 degrees Fahrenheit. The unit is capable of storing up to 5 million BTUs of energy. The typical home only uses about 3,500 BTUs of energy a day. And that's what makes the Sieg cell unique, its ability to collect the sun's energy and store it. Inventors say the Sieg cell will never run out of power. How can the Sieg cell be used? A number of ways.
You could have one unit on an individual house. You could have 5 houses, 6 houses off of one unit. You could have a subdivision off of one unit. You could have a city off of one unit, or a number of units. So it has broad application from residential right on through major power.
The Sieg cell sits on a trailer with a small house, and that's to demonstrate that power generated by the cell can run any and all appliances. Nielsen says they're not trying to run power companies out of business, but he says the Sieg cell is a man's dream. It's the first working model solar collector that actually stores sunshine.
Doctors say there's no known cure for arthritis, the disease that has stricken more than 30 million people, young and old. Doctors at today's panel discussion offered several helpful hints for arthritic sufferers. First, doctors say proper diagnosis is essential. Specialists say not every aching joint is due to arthritis, but if the disease is diagnosed, proper treatment and therapy is the next major step for treating arthritis. Thirdly, doctors say patients should eat 3 well-balanced meals daily, along with taking the prescribed amount of vitamins. And lastly, proper exercise, if recommended by doctors, is essential. Physicians say most patients should keep those joints loose and mobile unless the pain is too excruciating. Proper medication is also necessary, and Dr. James Armstrong says many arthritic sufferers can usually take the common household drug.
That plain old-fashioned aspirin is by far the most effective drug.
Why is that?
Well, statistics just prove that aspirin is as effective as many of the fancy and more expensive medications. It's also cheaper. The problem with aspirin is that it's somewhat inconvenient. It takes 12 to 16 aspirin per day for most people to become comfortable, whereas some of the newer medications you can take 2 or 3 pills a day.
Dr. Armstrong warns people about false cures about arthritis, saying many advertisements are money-making schemes. He reiterates that there is still no known cure for arthritis. Kim Davis, WSFA, TV News.
Now, if I remember the words, oh my God, it goes like this.
Oh, we're having a ball.
You made the birdies?
We're not doing too good as a team. We're 1 over, but we'll get there eventually. Tomorrow will be much better.
Okay.
Pretty much like that.
I do not have that jurisdiction. Isn't it great
to have you?
It's a pleasure to be here, and that's just not a casual remark. This is a lovely place, and the people are lovely, and if my golf were lovely, I'd be a happy man.
Okay.
I told you he'd miss it. I told you.
You ask every year, would you go back to the coaching if it came along, if the right job?
Well, if it was the right kind of a thing, probably feel I would.
Well,
Yeah.
these years you're going to say, no, I'm going to stick with what I'm doing.
Well, that's probably right. I'm probably smarter doing what I'm doing.
So did you get down here looking at some of these Alabama players this year?
We visited with Ken Johnson during the summer.
Before he went to California?
Before he went to California, but did not get a visit out of him. We had, I saw Watley a year ago when we were recruiting Eric Richardson, but when we were down here, I know Sonny Smith real well at Auburn. I know Wimp at Alabama, and they just told me to stay out of the state. So I guess we'll leave it to them to handle it.
You're living down there in Florida, and you're playing golf all the time, aren't you?
Phil, I'm just beginning to really enjoy myself. Our bowl game's in good situation right now.
Sell out last year?
Sold out last year.
Did you take credit for it?
No, I had a lot of help to be able to get it done.
But aren't you supposed to take credit for it?
No, but I tell you what, the nice people did do. They gave me a golf cart, where I could get out on the golf course. I said, now, if they just give me a little time, Phil, I'd have it made.
Look, the draft's coming up in just a day or so. You can go ahead and tell us who you're going to pick, aren't you?
Well, I don't know exactly who we're going to pick. We got it narrowed down pretty well between 2 or 3 guys, but, Tuesday morning we'll be there and we'll pick them.
So you're going to leave here and what, go to New York?
Yeah, I'll leave here right when we get through here, and it'll be a really busy, long day tomorrow.
Good. How's it going over there at Auburn?
Well, we just kind of, I don't know, it's been 10 days and they all beat up and sore and tired, and we didn't look very good yesterday. I hope that we learned some lessons yesterday and we'll look better Monday.
You making any birdies?
We made one. We can't make a putt. we've had it in play and had it in good shape, but we haven't made any putts.
Yeah, our problem then.
Yeah. Funny, isn't it?
Come in right there.
I will get me on TV.
For the last several years, Governor James has complained about what he feels is a lack of authority on the part of the commission in controlling higher education. And recently, the commission has found itself in a territorial squabble with the State Board of Education over two-year colleges. Governor James' staff drafted a bill that would turn all of this around. Representative Lee Pegues sponsored the bill and has since been working with Governor James, Finance Director Sid McDonald, and a council of university presidents on a compromise bill palatable to the universities but still strong enough to do what the governor wants. While the bill changes the name of the commission, increases its membership, and makes some other superficial alterations, the controversial changes center on actual authority over two-year and four-year colleges, authority over all existing and future programs, and authority in proposed mergers. Although Pegues has worked the bill over with the help of the Council of College Presidents, there's a lack of unanimity among the presidents for the compromise package. In addition, the Alabama Education Association and the Alabama Democratic Conference are opposed to the bill, and last week the State Board of Education decided not to endorse the bill. With the expected lobbying efforts of some of the four-year colleges, AEA's Paul Hubbard, and the State School Board action, moving the bill through the two chambers isn't looking as easy as Pegues and the governor's staff had hoped. And Pegues is also faced with a shortage of time, as there are only a few legislative days left in the session. So for those who are actively working in support of the bill, the strategy will be direct phone calls to the legislators and what they describe as straight talk, hoping to turn around what now appears to them to be a negative attitude about the bill. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Power company officials say power theft is a nationwide problem, resulting in millions of dollars worth of stolen electricity. Last year, Alabama Power suffered a $1.5 million utility loss statewide, and in the Montgomery area, about $300,000 of electricity was stolen. Who pays for the loss? Power company Representative Bryant Allen says other customers do.
That loss of revenue, or that generation of kilowatt hours that somebody takes and doesn't pay for, will eventually wind up, and the honest customers will have to make up that difference.
Allen says the main reason for culprits ripping off not only Alabama Power, but all utility companies across the country is because of economic conditions and the rapidly rising price of energy. He says Alabama Power is alerting their meter readers to watch out for any unauthorized power use. How is the electricity stolen? One dangerous way is by jumping the meter.
There are two pieces of wire that when the meter's out, you plug this in, and then you have electricity without it being metered. Here's something a little cruder, a broken knife stuck in there that would allow current to flow. Another common way to steal it is to steal a meter from somebody else's place and stick it into your meter socket.
The 9 people who were arrested today face a possible 6-month jail sentence and or a $500 fine. Police say about 3 more arrests are expected in Montgomery, and about 75 more statewide are probable as the 2-month-long investigation continues. Kim Davis, WSFA, TV News.
Henderson Jr., or excuse me, Betty Henderson. We arrested his wife.
There are provisions of the Family Protection Act that I would support. However, there are provisions that I think are unconstitutional and that would comprise danger to such things as women's rights and civil rights. Among other things, it would seek to deny the federal government any supportive role in meeting problems such as child abuse or spouse abuse. It would cut back federal involvement in efforts toward women's rights or civil rights in the schools, for example, but would project the federal government into the monitoring of some things that it now studiously avoids.
If you have an accident and need emergency treatment in Montgomery, the ambulance will take you to whichever hospital has been designated to operate the emergency room of the day. Representative Holmes says that practice is dangerous because he says a person could have a car accident in front of one hospital but bleed to death on the way to the hospital that has that day's emergency room. His bill specifies that a patient who needs emergency medical attention shall be taken to the nearest hospital for treatment. Baptist Medical Center spokesman Gene Hanna says emergency rooms generally lose money because they deal mostly with indigents, so rotating emergency care is a way of sharing the losses. But Hanna says a patient in a life-threatening situation won't be turned away from any emergency room. St. Margaret's Hospital spokesman Joe Lehman agrees with Hanna that the present system works well. Holmes says hospital representatives have objected to the bill, so he might amend it to say that only patients in life-threatening situations would go to the nearest hospital. All others would be cared for at the emergency hospital for the day. But Hanna and Lehman say that with the amendment, the bill would simply legislate what the hospitals are doing now. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
That's got a chance. Who's reading the putts in this outfit? Barry Bryant must be reading.
Mr. Straight, let's just see.
Yeah.
Left kidney instead of the right.
That ball wouldn't dare stay out, would it?
Ooh.
Coach, that wasn't much of a putting exhibition. Y'all been making any birdies?
We've made a few, but I certainly haven't been making any. I've had one good.
You been reading the putts?
Well, I must have, because we've been missing them pretty good. We haven't had any short putts. All have been long.
You having fun?
Oh, yeah, we're enjoying it very much.
Good. You in with a bunch of reprobates. Who made this game?
I assure you that I didn't. Oh, they're fine people. We had a good time. And
I think the only decent fellow in the crowd is Galen. I see you riding with him.
Well, I picked him,
Try to take care of those little players.
Well, I didn't want to be with Taylor, you know, because he's always he doesn't help your game much.
I understand. See you later.
Well, you're playing with him or against him. It doesn't matter.
I'm not going to ask who's playing who. Bye.
City Finance Director Sam Austin says the city needs $911,000 to make it through this fiscal year. He says the largest expenditures are in the police department, insurance, and traffic engineering. He says the high cost of fuel and an increase in police salaries are big factors, along with large amounts of maintenance, accidents, and repairs. The Finance Committee recommends that the additional money come from $553,000 in increased revenues, $350,000 from business licenses, $85,000 from property sales, and the remainder from waterworks, sale of surplus equipment, and fees for services. Then $358,000, which surpassed anticipated revenue collections, would make up the $911,000 total. Of that figure, most of the money comes from unneeded money from sanitation, fire, and finance. Committee member Joe Reed didn't have much to say for the total recommendation, but disagreed with appropriating the $85,000 in property sales. He says if placed in a line item, the money would be locked in and can't be moved without the mayor's recommendation. Reed says he'd rather see the money in the general fund and have the staff go back and shift money in other areas to make up the difference. Despite Reed's arguments, the committee voted 3-2 to recommend that the council approve the mid-year budget changes. The recommendation will come up in ordinance form in tomorrow's city council meeting. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
In reference to Section 1 is it possible that we
y'all done tomorrow? Right? How you doing?
Several of Folsom's staff members will go to Georgia this week to study that state's fuel adjustment clause and then make recommendations at next month's public hearing. In Georgia, the power company asked for a new rate on a quarterly basis, giving the PSC staff 3 months to review the company's calculations. Currently, Alabama Power can request a new rate every month, but by law, Alabama's PSC has only 5 days to review the company's figures. Folsom says the commission doesn't have the manpower to adequately verify the company's calculations. He says that's where changes must and will be made. Folsom says the commission is also mandated by law to grant a request only if no corrections are found in the fuel adjustment rate proposal, and if no corrections are made, Folsom says there's nothing the commission can do except okay the rate and express their personal opinion. But Folsom says something must be done in behalf of the consumer.
The public cannot afford these tremendous rate increases during these inflationary times. The commission must be responsible to the people of Alabama, and it will be.
Alabama Power Company Representative Neil Wade says the utility will work with the PSC to come up with a fair and equitable method for setting the fuel adjustment rate. Wade says the power company makes no profit on the fuel adjustment charge. Kim Davis, WSFA, TV News. One area where Commissioner Folsom says changes must and will be made is in the time frame when the staff reviews the power company's fuel adjustment figures. By law, Alabama Power submits a proposed fuel figure every month, and the commission staff has only 5 days to study the company's calculations. Folsom says that's not enough time, and if no corrections are found, the commission is mandated by law to grant the rate request. But in Georgia, the power company's rate hearing is held on a quarterly basis. Folsom says his staff is going to review Georgia's fuel adjustment method and perhaps use it as a model for Alabama. Commission President Billy Joe Camp echoes Folsom's feeling, saying something must be done about the current fuel adjustment clause. Camp says enough is enough.
We've had this procedure long enough. It's got to be reviewed, and we're going to come out with one which I think the people of this state can have more faith and confidence in.
Alabama Power Company officials say the utility company will work with the PSC to find a fair and equitable rate adjustment method. Officials say any method used must allow the company to recover the escalating fuel costs. Kim Davis, WSFA, TV News.
The proposed amended budget would cover $911,000 in increased expenditures, areas that require more money than the city originally anticipated. The Finance Committee recommends that the money come from $553,000 in increased revenues and $358,000 where revenues exceeded expenses. Included in that $911,000 is $85,000 the city received from the sale of the baggage area at Old Union Station and Scott Street Fire Station. Councilman Joe Reed objects to placing the $85,000 in the amended budget. Reed says since the money came from property sales, it should go back into real property. He moved to amend the budget resolution by deleting the $85,000. But Councilmember Alice Reynolds said she didn't think Reed's amendment was in order because if adopted, the budget would not be in balance. The council voted against Reed's amendment and voted in favor of Councilman Luther Oliver's motion to table the budget for 2 weeks. Oliver then asked if the budget could be sent back to the Finance Committee for further review. He was told that all committee members had been present and the majority voted to approve it. The council went on to other business, and halfway through the meeting, Oliver asked to reconsider the tabled measure. Council President Willie Peake asked if it could wait until the end of the meeting. Oliver agreed. After all other council business was finished, Oliver moved to reconsider the budget. The council argued at length on whether Oliver's original motion was dependent on the budget going back to the Finance Committee. Council President Peake ruled that the motion to table had nothing to do with sending the measure back to committee, but said the council could reconsider the measure. Members then voted to reconsider the budget and finally to approve it on a 7-2 vote. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
For more than an hour, Perry County's Lee Pegues successfully fought off 3 attempts to kill the bill by postponing it. But the clincher came when Covington County's Seth Hammett squeezed in an amendment removing 2-year schools from the curriculum control of this new Alabama Post-Secondary Education Commission. Holly of Coffee County Cates of Butler County and Ford of Etowah County opposed the bill, saying it would essentially destroy the two-year college program by allowing a council of four-year college presidents to have input on the curriculum of the two-year schools. Pegues, however, says there are checks and balances to control any imbalance in representation. Pegues says it's time to get a coordinating board that would end what he says is a heavy duplication of programs, which in turn drains education dollars unnecessarily. Once the Hammett Amendment to exempt the two-year schools passed, Pegues ended his debate and managed to postpone the final consideration. All along, Pegues and others have said the bill would fly through the House but face problems in the Senate. But now Pegues is faced with more opposition than he expected in his own chamber. The House also passed what's become known as the Bear Bryant Bill, allowing University Board of Trustees to make exemptions to the mandatory retirement age. And earlier in the day, the House Judiciary Committee favorably voted out a bill drafted by Attorney General Charles Graddick to restructure the Pardons and Parole Board. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News in the House of Representatives.
I know one savings loan.
One last comment. When you talk about public housing in Alabama, you build up hope for people who have been living in substandard conditions all their lives.
The legislature authorized sale of the bonds several years ago, but interest rates have increased so that the state would have problems selling the bonds under the current interest ceiling. But rather than raising the current ceiling, both houses of the legislature have okayed a measure that removes any interest limits on the $25 million worth of bonds, which means that there's no limit to the amount of money the state can be obligated to pay as interest when paying off the bonds. The controversial joint generation bill also whizzed through the Senate today. The bill would allow certain municipalities to join together and buy some of Alabama Power Company's generating ability if the power company agrees. Those cities say the ability to buy into generating plants would allow them to sell electricity to citizens at a lower rate. The power company opposes the bill, claiming it would actually cost customers more money. The Senate agreed to several amendments that the bill's sponsor says will hurt the bill, amendments such as one preventing the municipalities from buying into facilities already under construction. That would eliminate the second generator being built at Farley Nuclear Plant in Dothan. But the bill's sponsors agreed to the amendments in order to get the Senate bill over to the House in time for possible passage in the remaining 6 days of the session. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
George Rogers.
Quite an honor.
Hey, all right. I tell you, it's all right, man. It's all right.
So many draft choices through the years that he's got an abundant.
I had your as he came, and you saw the look on his face. One thing about the commissioner,
Best organizations.
for this time around and the playoffs. We'll continue with the 1981 National Football League Collegiate Player.
I didn't really think that's pick me, but I'm real glad because their type team passed the ball a whole lot. That's going to help me a whole lot, and I'm just so happy.
Yeah, I just saw you over there on the bed. You were just kind of not really paying attention, and all of a sudden you heard your name.
Yes, I just taking it easy. I just said, I might go to second round. Yeah, this right here, I'm just happy. I just can't wait to get started with them on that.
And I feel proud to be the first one, to be the highest draft pick out of Alabama State.
Have you talked to Detroit?
Yes, I have. They talked to me right after the draft, and they want me to come Thursday up there to visit just Sunday.
Second round, ninth pick of the second round was a little better than you expected, wasn't it?
Right. I was expecting to go about the third round from down up.
It makes a little difference in the dough, won't it?
Oh, yeah, this makes some difference in it, a lot different.
Do you have somebody to do your negotiating?
Yes, I have Charles Stickley out of Montgomery.
In each of the 4 schools, fluorescent lights are replacing the older incandescent bulbs. County school board officials say the fluorescent lights are more energy efficient and provide brighter lights in the classrooms. The 4 schools participating in the program are Hayneville Road Elementary, Lee High School, Floyd and Bellingraph Junior Highs. Based on a technical audit conducted by Alabama Power Company, school officials expect to save almost $30,000 each year. The entire project cost $173,000 and is funded with a matching grant shared equally by the federal government and the county school board. Under the Department of Energy grant, schools, hospitals, and buildings owned by local governments and public institutions are eligible for funding. Officials anticipate that the entire cost of the project will be recovered within 9 years, and they hope to expand the project to other schools in this area. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
The bill requires that a joint legislative committee approve any changes in pay, sick leave, or reclassification policies. Those who oppose the bill are afraid the committee would take over the powers of the State Personnel Board. But senators didn't take action on the bill and agreed to carry it over until tomorrow. The Senate did pass a couple of other controversial bills. One, the Joint Generation Bill, would allow 12 cities to buy into Alabama Power Company's power generating facilities. Laden with several amendments, that bill now goes to the House. And both houses have passed a bill lifting all interest rate restrictions on a $25 million highway bond issue. That issue was authorized 8 years ago, but the bonds were never sold. The Senate could take up the general fund and education budgets tomorrow. Both of the House-passed measures came out of a Senate committee today and included a 10% cost of living pay raise for state employees. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.